And welcome back to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. A little somber today. We'll just jump right into it. And I just want to say this. I have been struggling to do another show. You've been asking me if we should do one or if you want to do one. I will take the complete blame for that. I have been struggling finding the, I guess willingness is the word. I didn't want to come on and seem somber, but then I realized it's okay to come on and seem somber. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to fake it. I didn't know how to pretend like I was excited to do this again. So I think a good step, and you brought this up too, is like we're obviously going to talk about Jerry. So I'm happy to be on here today. Mark, go ahead and take it away from me.
Are we going to the
We are going, yes.
No, we're not going back to the
the music.
No.
We're starting.
We're
no
just with the
music
cold
today.
open today.
No music today.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the story, or if you hadn't read the stuff on our site, we lost our I don't want to say our founding father. The quick history of NorthcentralPA.com is Kathy and Lou Kolb had started this and run it for almost a decade, and they were looking to retire and looking to relocate. And when you're not in North Central PA, it's hard to run NorthcentralPA.com. And Jerry had been a friend of mine for, a few years before it. I'd met Jerry on another project, and we were friends. And we were sitting at lunch one day in Rivals, and not to give a free plug to a local establishment, but this is the story. And he said, I think sooner or later we're going to have a chance to buy NorthcentralPA.com, because I think they're making the plans to retire and get out, and it's going to become available. And I know them, and I've worked with them, and I've talked to them, and we're going to have this opportunity.
And
so,
you said why?
I said why?
Did you say why, or did he give you like the Jerry pitch, like why we're doing it?
Well, there was a part of it. To be totally honest, at the time I knew it existed, but I wasn't a reader. I wasn't a. Yeah. And he said, this is where the industry's going. Newspapers are dying. Mm-hmm. You can see it every day. They're getting smaller. They're like the newspaper. It's kind of like the home phone dial-up industry. Like, you just look at the trends, and that's where it's going, and it doesn't ever seem to be coming back. And online everything is going up.
And he saw this.
And he saw it and shot. And it's not just online shopping and online,
right.
And this is one of them. And he's like, it's established. And so anyway, it was his vision, it was his drive, and not just to take it from where they had it and build it into what it could be. And he did that. And it will be 4 years in May that we have been running it. And we have gone through all the I don't want to say the growing pains, the challenges, because we purchased a business that was established. They had 35,000 Facebook followers. Sure. Like, we had an audience. Mm-hmm. It has now since more than doubled, but it's not like we were starting from scratch.
No.
But as we're trying to grow and you're trying to expand and revenues are coming up, well, then what do we do with the revenues? And from any business, as they grow and get bigger, those were some of the challenges that we need more people, because then we need more money, but then we need to get more money to balance out the more people. And, back in the early days, there were times that Jerry and I sat down and like, this is what we have in the account, and this is what we're going to have to spend to pay out in a couple of weeks. And there were some hairy times, which are the same way it is with every business. And I remember there are times he's like, did we get a check from them yet? And I said, no. He said, well, that's coming. Let me call. And then now I can honestly say, right hand to God, we have more money in our account than we ever have. And as I said in the article that I wrote, we have deals now with multiple content providers. We have a Google deal. We have a Meta deal. We have Town News has been our partner through this for a long time, but our revenue streams are better than ever, and that's, I don't want to say entirely because of Jerry, but it's almost entirely because of Jerry.
I think a lot of times with stuff like this, you need a visionary. Like, you just need somebody who sees it and believes it. And it doesn't always mean they're right, and it doesn't always mean it works, but you need somebody that just is, I don't want to say they're in denial of what other people may be telling them, Like, but you need somebody who is so just kind of like foundationary, like somebody who is just like, it is going to work, like it is going to work, and just keeps kind of pushing forward. And that was Jerry, without a doubt, especially for us, especially for doing this. So yeah, I think when I think about some of the greatest things that have happened in my life, it has usually happened because somebody had a vision. Somebody saw something, knew what it could be, whether it was a company, a person, an organization, a team, whatever it was. Somebody typically took a step back, looked at it, and said, this could be really, really great. And for this project, for this organization, that was Jerry.
And like just to be around him and you know, now just the simple story of his passing, he had become an avid runner. He was 54. And as all of us, you haven't got there yet because you're 35, but wait till you get there. And you know, I'm 51 now, and you keep dealing with this stuff like, you know, we just talked about midlife crisis the other day, and Jerry never had a midlife crisis. I wouldn't per se, but it's just kind of like these constant awakenings and reevaluations, and kind of like I've never met a person more than Jerry. And you actually have this too. We've talked about this. If Jerry wanted to do it, he was going to do it. There was nothing going to stand in our, and for all of us, I just had this conversation with someone the other day. All of us are like that. If it's something that's in our lane, there are some people like you and your ability to dive into technology. You are better at a lot of this stuff than I am because you have more lanes than most people. We all have some lanes. You have more than most. Jerry's lanes were like limitless.
It was honest. I say this like in a good way. It was stupid. It was absurd how many things Jerry could have and listen, you didn't always, it doesn't mean you always agreed with Jerry,
right?
But like you could have, if you wanted to have a reasonable debate or conversation about a topic, Jerry could have sat down with just about anybody and talked about it. I mean, and there was the spectrum, like you said, it was endless. The things he could talk about.
Because of that, he never encountered anything in his life that was like, yeah, I really wish I could do that. I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't know where to start, he would figure out where to start.
Yes.
And that will be the one of the things that I take from, you know, I just miss him already. You know, it's been a rough week here. I just miss his personality as he would barge in the door, and he was sometimes he was deep in thought.
Sure.
But when he wasn't deep, when he had something to say, he was saying it with energy. He was saying it with passion.
When you and I were speaking earlier this week, I said being in an office space with him, because I don't know what he was like at home, but being in an office space with him, there was something very Kramer-esque to him, where you never knew when the door was going to fly open and you were going to be thrown in to something that literally 10 seconds ago wasn't even on your radar. And that was, for me, Jerry just had that Kramer-esque to him. You were waiting for the door to fly open, and you were either going to start debating or hollering or, you know, figuring something out. And that is the part that I said to you. There's a physical nature to Jerry that I will never get used to that door not flying open. Like that will be every time we do this show, I will be waiting for that door to like fling open without a knock, without any consideration that the show is going. And I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about it. Like that will be the hardest part.
Well, and so above and beyond the persona that he carried in the office, like I said, the thing that I hope to take away from this, and I wish I had half of it, a quarter of it, of what he had, is, you know, all of us, we have those points where we kind of need that cheerleader. We have that, hey, are you doing this? Hey, are you doing this? And he was his own biggest cheerleader. He was his own biggest motivator. Like he just did it. He didn't need anyone to tell him he could do it. He didn't need anyone to tell him he was smart enough. You can figure it. He just did it. And I hope that I can be better at that as I go forward, because he was, you know, in the article I wrote, he was always about the next. I remember once we met at Wild Wings, which I'll give another free plug to another, and he has this idea, and I think we had started North Central PA. If we hadn't started it, we were close.
Okay.
We sit down at Wild Wings, and he tells me about this idea. It's not even an idea, it's an existence. It's about this sandblasting the bridges,
Okay.
because he gave me some crazy stat of how old the bridges are in central Pennsylvania, and they're blah, 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 and their life. Do you know the life expectancy of a bridge? Jerry did, because he told me about it.
Sure.
And he's like, there's this new technology that uses water, and it uses very fine, like, so they blast it with water. It's a natural element in the environment. It goes blah, 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 blah. And he's giving off, do you know how many bridges there are? Do you know how many? We could, if we bought into this company, we could buy one of these, we could buy 2 of these machines. We leave, and I'm just like, where in the hell did this come from?
Right.
But all of a sudden, he's a sandblasting expert because he read something about it, and then he read something more about it, and then he read something more about it. He told a story, when he was young in the hustle days. Something about, this was back in the baseball card boom, and Jerry loved baseball. Once upon a time, of all the things he did, once upon a time, he told me his dream job in life would have been to be a baseball scout, which to me would be an awful life, but to him it was, what any. And I love baseball, don't get me wrong, but he had somewhere when the new baseball cards would come out, and they came out like on the West Coast.
Right.
And he had a guy that he knew that worked in the industry that was a distributor or something out there. The guy would FedEx them overnight to Jerry in Williamsport.
Yeah.
He would take them, and he would order them on Wednesday. He would get them on Thursday. He would go to like a flea market in York on Friday, and he would sell them. And you heard this plan, this business plan of how do we get it from wholesale to middleman to me to markup to, and you're just like, how did you? And you were 20. How old? You were 23. Like, how did this ever? And he's like, well, I was a baseball card collector, and just stupid stuff.
And just like, these were not like low grade, like these were at the time, like these were like the tops of it, like these were the best of the best baseball cards.
Oh yes.
Like these weren't rip-offs. Like these like these were the baseball cards that people wanted.
And he has it, and he would tell me, I would go down, I would set up my table, I would be this, I'd be there by noon, by 3 o'clock, I was done, I would drive home, I would make this many hundred.
Yeah.
And it was just, I've never met anyone so inquisitive. I've never met anyone so, as you said, vastly. He could sit down and have a conversation with anybody about anything and be intelligent and be more intelligent than most. And he just did it with this belief that, hey, here's what we're going to do next. Right. And it's going to be great.
Well, there were moments where you felt awkward telling Jerry no, or telling Jerry that you thought maybe he might be wrong, because he was so convicted, and so, I mean, one of the things because I had only known Jerry for 3.5 years, and one of the things that you have to learn, and you do find a balance with him. You did find a balance with him, is like, it was not fun having to tell Jerry, like, are you sure? Like, it was, because like, to your point, he just believed, and he was so convicted in what he thought. And I say all of that, like, with a smile on my face. Like, the other part of it, there's so many things here. The other part that I've said too, and I was telling my girlfriend about this, he was such a willing debater. And so I think, like, for a lot of people who don't know, like, he was truly a Republican. I mean, truly in the greatest sense of it.
I think he's a registered independent, to be honest. Well,
that's true. But I mean,
he really
believed
right,
in like conservative values and things like that. But if you walked around and you met him, like, he just loved working. He loved working with Democrats. He loved working with Republicans. He would have talked to anybody about what it was he believed because he might convince you, or you might tell him something he didn't know. And he was progressive, but yet had an old school to him that I just think a lot of people don't naturally have. He could be forward thinking, and he could be progressive, and he was willing to try new things and all of that. And at the same time, like, he had these staunch conservative values that that conundrum, right? Like, that balance,
right?
It's so hard to find in people, and then let alone to find people that actually want to, like, seek it out. Like, he wanted to be involved on both sides of the aisle. He wanted to be involved with different parties. Like those people just don't walk around. It's hard to find those.
And I remember this too, and this is he was very involved with Thrive, which is a local cause that kind of helps international students, and I remember he'd always talked about how much of a struggle it was for this organization financially, and I said, why? And he said, because it's like a religious based group that I don't know how I'm kind of speaking out of school, but this is what he said, because it's with international students, that the right sees it as too blue and the right doesn't want to support it. But because there's a religious element, the left sees it as too red and the left doesn't. So because it's a wonderful cause and they do great things, but there's a chance that like they think I can't help the other side. And then there was Jerry right in the middle. And I will say this too, you have, and people say all this stuff all the time. They say glowing things about people after they pass away.
Sure.
You have never met anyone who was willing to help, who wanted to help, who helped more people. Like I remember one day I asked him about Saturday morning, and he said, I'm buying groceries for 3 families. Now I think one was himself, his family, and one was his parents, I think. But like, I can honestly say I've never spent a Saturday morning buying groceries for 2 families, let alone 3 families. But these were just things. Now, don't get me wrong. He enjoyed being the caretaker. He enjoyed helping. It was, but just.
It was one of the things that I had said to you, and you kind of put it into your article, because you knew Jerry a little bit longer than me.
I've known Jerry about 10 years.
Okay, so you about more than double the time that I got to know Jerry. The neat part for me, and I mean it feels longer than what it was, but I said this to you. I feel like I got to know him when he was peaking, and so after just going through my mom for 3 years and watching her deteriorate because of cancer, and kind of watching her where she was to where when she finally passed away. And for me, Jerry, the last 3.5 years was almost the opposite. I got to see him get healthier. I got to see him get more energy. I said to you the other day, like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, he was nicer and funnier. And from the 3.5 years that I knew him, I mean, literally, I felt like I was watching a ship take off. Like I was like, you are not the same person that I met 3.5 years ago. And so for me, that's a very conflicting thing, because I just watched someone deteriorate in front of my eyes. And then when it ended, it made sense to me. Like I could make sense of it in my head. And then to watch Jerry for the last 3.5 years really like find his stride, I'm having a very difficult time of balancing that in my head. Because in my head, I'm thinking to myself like, no, like he was peaking. And so that's tough for me.
I totally agree. I got a couple of stories now from that. When I don't know why. Again, he was 54. I turned 50, and like, you just have these moments, and Jerry's passing has certainly been a moment for me. But he decided he wanted to be a life coach, and he went through the certification process, and he was now working on a book or a novel, because as I put in the article, with ChatGPT really helped him with that. He'd become a run. He started walking. I don't know if I think he started walking for the health benefit, but also for the like he had said, it has become my church. Like that, I go out and I get this walk, and then he started running, and he loved running, and he ran a marathon, and he was. So you're right, he was more vibrant. I just told a mutual friend who we had a meeting with this morning. We were talking about stuff, but we were also talking about Jerry, and I said, I don't know if I had seen him in a bad mood in about the last year. And before, as you said, like there were times that you didn't want to deal, because depending on what he's working.
Like a normal person.
Like a normal.
We all have ups and downs. We all have.
And I think the pressures of, because we've gotten to a point here, like I said, we have more money in our account than we ever have. We are flowing from day to day. We're not worried.
We are a balanced company now, more so than when we
more
started.
so. And I think early on, because this was his dream and this was his baby, and he sold it to everyone. And when there were peaks and valleys, he probably wore it on his sleeve. Absolutely. Were you there the day I threw the newspaper at him?
I believe so.
And I think it was a Web Weekly, and I say that because there's a Web Weekly sitting right here. but we were maybe this far apart,
Yeah.
and he was impassionately telling. And I just remember I grabbed it and I fired it at him like a frisbee. I said, "That's not what I'm talking about." And in the flight from me to him, and all this, newspapers aren't all attached; they're not bound, and just pieces of newspaper went everywhere.
Yeah.
And there was a moment for him of like, "Who?" And that kind of like calmed him down. But yeah, it is weird because when you gave your quote and you said he's been, healthier, yes, because he's been running and he's been, I think he looked better, and because he had longer hair, and we were looking at he had the buzz cut and he had the longer hair, and Carrie and I were just talking. He was so much more of a long hair, and it's not like rock star long, but it was longer than and but when you said nicer, and he just seemed really, really happy.
Yes.
And it was, he was one of the guy. And again, early on, it was his baby. There was pressures, there was stuff, and there were people. We all had our good days and bad days.
Sure.
Now that we've kind of got our sea legs under us, I don't want to say it's always been good days, because we're dealing with news, and sometimes you get some of these news stories that are disturbing, and we're all kind of a little bit like, but when he walked into the office, you were happy. Yeah. Like there was never a point where because we've all had those coworkers that you're like, either I wish they weren't here, or I'm not sure what I'm going to get today. He was in such a good place, and we were all in such a good place. Yeah. And then he just he went for a run, and he made it home. Yeah. And he ran all the way, got home, and collapsed in the front yard, and that was it. And but we just saw him Friday, and he was as big as life. I was texting with him Saturday. Yeah. And then we got the news Sunday, and it is.
It's been tough. I've noticed. I think sometimes you don't realize how much you're sharing with somebody, or how much you're talking with somebody, until they're gone. I think obviously with family, or your closest friends, things like that. I went back through and I looked at my text messages with Jerry, and they were not that many as far as consistency, but it was amazing to me how many times, every time we texted, it was a check-in. It was hey, sorry about your mom. Did you get to see her? Things like that. And so I don't know, we didn't do a ton of small talk, but every message had value when I went back through reading it. That made me feel
well. One of the things too is you when you put a grasp on what real life is, and when Carrie and I were talking the other day, she said, because Carrie's our news director, and they handle different parts of the business, but it was they were. I don't know how to say it. They were the president and vice president. They were the two most important people here. Yeah. And, Carrie said the other day, I have probably talked to Jerry more in the last 4 years than anyone else on earth. Yeah. Than my husband, than my kids, than she's there would be weekends I'd get, there would be 10 texts a day on weekends. Yeah. And to the point, and she said every point, she's like, oh my God, it's Jerry again. She put her phone, but she's like, we were in constant communication. And when I came in, the days are running. Today is Thursday. Monday was obviously just strange. Tuesday was better. Wednesday, Carrie was really bad. Carrie was worse Wednesday than I've seen her all week. And I went in and I was in her office, and she just said, there's 5 questions I have for Jerry right now, because I don't know what to do. Sure. And so it is just, it is the people who are in your life and you don't really know. And I haven't told this story in the air. I've told this. We had, as I said, Jerry loved baseball, and my son's on the Torresville's high school baseball team, and we have had a very unlucky weather start. And our first game was Monday. We finally got a game in. There's other teams that have had 2 or 3 games, and the game was a mess. It was 12-11. It was and as I'm leaving the field, my first thought was to text Jerry and just say, wait till I tell you about this baseball game. and then you're like, oh, you can't. And those are the things.
You brought up Carrie, and you and I had mentioned this the other day as well. One of the, because there's obviously not a lot of positives. One of the positives that I said to you was, when you're on this side of what's going on, right? Like when you're not behind the curtain and you're an editor, you're a writer, or you're doing a show, a lot of the things that we end up discussing are the complaints, right? You're trying to take care of things, you're trying to resolve issues. And so there's a lot of times, or a lot of months throughout the year, where a lot of the feedback we're getting or that we're discussing is like a negative aspect. It is, that's the way the world works.
Because people, they're more apt to complain than to complain.
One of the best things about this week, just looking for positives, seeing the response to people across the country. That's the part of this that I think a lot of people don't understand. It wasn't like local industry, it wasn't local papers, it was across the country. How many people in the online news industry, in the digital marketing industry, reached out and said, what a loss. Like, Jerry was so good to us. Jerry was an expert. Jerry did this, Jerry did that. And so to hear other people kind of talk about Jerry was neat, but it was also neat to hear about how awesome people thought we were doing. Because again, you don't get that every day when you're just kind of grinding and you're just trying, like you said, there were months early on where you're just trying to keep the boat straight. You're just trying to keep it afloat and you're keeping it straight. And what was cool earlier this week is there was a moment where, even I said this to Carrie, we kind of got to see behind the curtain like Jerry got to for years. And so that part, like getting to kind of hear what Jerry got to hear, was really, really neat. And it put you in a mindset. You can see why Jerry valued it as much as he did.
Right.
If those were the things that he was hearing across the country about how well we were doing, how did you guys do this? How did you pull off that? It took us years to get to that. You guys got there in 6 months. How did you? And when you start to hear people say those things, you go, Jerry got to hear that every day. Like, no wonder he was no wonder he was so convinced we were doing the right thing or moving the right direction and stuff like that. So just trying to look for like little positives like that. Getting to kind of see behind that curtain this week has been really, really fascinating and really, really rewarding. And it's just another small part of Jerry that Jerry was unique, because he would tell you things, but you didn't always know everything, right? Like, you didn't know everything Jerry was hearing or everything Jerry saw. And there were moments he was excited to tell you something. Then there was moments he was kind of holding on to it and waiting. And so I don't know, getting to see behind that curtain this week has been one of the positive aspects.
Yes. And, for those of us here, that's what's weird, this business is daily. It's constant. We can't stop, and we can't. So we are back in Monday, and we were all here Monday, and we're kind of grieving and working and just kind of continuing to plug away, but from like the personal aspect, so we've got that aspect of how do we figure out the business, what parts did Jerry do that we don't now that we have to make those connections, and how do we do that? There's the business side, and then there's the personal side. And for those of us, you lose a friend unexpectedly, and someone who's too young, and all these things, and the struggle. It's hard to come to work on his dream when he's not here to help, and he was the number one helper with the dream. When you're trying
it was his dream.
It was his dream, and you're trying to figure out the emotions.
In a weird way, it's understated to call it his dream. I know for most of the time it's hyperbolic to say it's somebody's dream. He saw it, and when other people didn't. And
and I just read some Dr. Seuss. Someone posted this. I don't even know if they posted about Jerry. Dr. Seuss has a quote that says, "Don't be sad that it ended, be happy that it happened."
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing that I'm dealing with. Like, I knew him for 10 years. He was such a good friend, and he was such a, there's so many influences that he has left with me. And part of me should stop feeling sorry for myself that I've lost a friend, and I should be thrilled that I had this friend and that he was in, because we met through such a convoluted way. Like, our paths wouldn't have needed to cross. But one of the things you're talking about, since he's passing, and since I was, got to be the one that wrote the story for us, I was in a JV baseball game, and one of the grandparents of one of my son's friends came up to me and said, "Oh, I didn't know you knew Jerry. We did this. He officiated so-and-so's wedding."
Right.
And then I was at the Democratic committee meeting on Tuesday night, and a lady came up and said, "Hey, I read what you wrote. I sang with Jerry in the choir." And then I was at Montoursville High School, and I was at a meeting for my son about his class schedule for next year, and I saw the principal, and he said, "I didn't know you knew Jerry. I'm better friends with his brother, but I went to church. I've known Jerry."
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, and I know the world is like that a lot of times, but he was so far-reaching, and he had so many connections and contacts and positivities, and he just wasn't there. He wasn't just there like the life of the party guy. He was there that he could help, and he was going to help you. And if you needed it, he could do it, and he could do. And because of his technological, like, he could help with everything.
You hinted at this in the story. Emma actually shared it too, and you had mentioned something about him leaning, like how many people leaned on Jerry,
Right?
Like for help or whether it was advice or whatever it may be. One of the things, and I've always said this about my grandfather, I think my grandfather is one of the best at this, and it's something that I try to emulate as much as I possibly can, but it's really hard to do. My grandfather like just saw potential. Like I can't explain it to you, but like he just sized someone up, and he could kind of tell, good, bad, whatever it is, and like he just kind of saw more what the person could do than what they couldn't. And that I've tried to like, Jerry is maybe the closest I've ever seen to that, where he can look at somebody and kind of be like, oh, they can do this, and everything else will just kind of swipe aside. And I remember having conversations with him, and I'd be like, I'm struggling with this, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. He said, yeah. He goes, but here's the things that you can do that nobody else can. He goes, you're seeing this, and you're doing, and I don't know how do you say that in one word? Like I don't know what that characteristic is. But he had it, unlike most people, where you just see the value and the potential over the negative or what they can't do.
I said this to his wife, who was just here a second ago, and I stopped at their house last night, and we were just sitting on the porch talking, and with her and his son, and I said, one of the reasons that I'm feeling sorry for myself through this is I think Jerry, and I'm going to try to say this without crying, I don't know if I can do it. I think Jerry was the biggest cheerleader I've ever had for me. And I say this like bigger than my mom, bigger than my ex-wife. Like there was never anyone who was like, what are you writing? Why aren't you writing? You could write, you can do this, you could do this. He called me in and he showed me a TikTok, and he's like, this is a guy doing this on TikTok. You could do this. And in a year you'd be doing public speaking, and you'd be like, he was,
he saw what you could do.
And believe, like, again, we all have this. There's all things in life we're really good at, and there's all things in life that we suck at. And I do that, I think, to an extreme. Like if I'm not good at it, I'm not good at it. I'm one of the least mechanically inclined men you'll ever meet. But like, and I think I'm a good writer, and I don't lack for self-confidence in that. But there's always that when you've got that guy behind you that's reminding you that you're good, that reminding you that you're doing a good job, that you can do this, that don't like, and that is personally one of the biggest things that I will lose.
Yeah.
And you have to find it from within, because he gave it from outside.
Yeah. Can just to delve into, just as someone who got to kind of watch your dynamic from across the room, one of the fascinating things watching you and Jerry is the way opposites attract. The way Jerry knew you could do the things he couldn't, and the way you knew Jerry could do the things that you couldn't. And to watch you two with that understanding was always, comical isn't the word, but it is like this obnoxious fit, right? And there's so many times in life where it would come off as jealousy, maybe, right? Like, oh, like if I could only write like Mark, or for you, oh, if I only understood this like Jerry. And for whatever reason, neither of you ever looked at the other that way. It was always kind of like, I can help you do this, I'm good at this. And I don't know, watching you two feed off of each other was always a unique dynamic to watch.
I just told Beth this the other night, or last night at their house. I would tell, like, the offensive joke in the office, and it's always directed at someone,
Me.
whether it was you
Me.
because you're from Blossburg, or whether it was a generic comment about women or something like that.
Sure.
And whenever I would say this, the most offended person in the room was always Jerry.
Sure.
Like I would make a comment about the women are crazy, and then they would say men are sick, but then like Jerry would be the one who wouldn't even he would just turn and walk away.
Yeah.
And like it was yes, there was a
Give and take. There was.
Yes.
It's just sometimes something looks like a round peg square hole, and you guys looked like a round peg square hole, but then all of a sudden it fit. And your dynamic is something that, well, I'll never kind of forget that dynamic, because there's very many people that I am around that the dynamic wouldn't have worked. They just would have been jealous of the other person, or they would have said, this person doesn't understand me, and for whatever reason, your guys' square hole round peg fit unbelievably well. That is how
I never really thought of it that way.
That's how I've always taken that.
And I maybe, I don't know. I met, when I'll go into this, and this doesn't matter to anything, but I met Jerry. We were on the Lycoming County Film Commission.
Okay.
Because Jerry loved, and he was involved, and he knew all this stuff. And I don't know how the hell he got on it. I got on it.
The LCFC.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose of it was they were trying to tell people, like, if you need to film something in a beautiful outdoor setting, we've got and if you need cities, it's close, and you need mountains, we're here. And that was the whole purpose. And we were on the project, and I said I used to go to these meetings every like 8 or 9 people, and I knew 2 of them.
Yeah.
But there was a guy that would send out the reminders of the meetings, and at the bottom, his tagline was always, "Passion is what makes life worth living," and that was Jerry.
Yeah.
Well, we were at a meeting at Wegmans, which is another plug for another local place. We were always at these food places. I don't know why that was.
Yeah.
And something like the meeting had started, and then somebody went to go get something, and there was like a pause in the meeting, and Jerry said something to me about my radio show that I used to do with Chris Massey on ESPN Radio.
Yeah.
And my whole thought, like because I was a jock, and I was a 3-sport, I was a jock through and through, but I was also a little nerdy, and I liked to write, and I thought that like there was nobody like me, and that's that. So I'm at this film commission meeting, and there's nobody here that likes sports, and that was just my belief. So we get to this break in the action, and Jerry, we're probably this far apart, and Jerry says something about something that I just said on the radio.
Okay.
And I remember looking at him, and I said, "You mean you listen?" And it's just like this. Like, I was always shocked when people told me they listened anyway.
Right.
But not somebody in a film commission meeting. Like, my daughter loves film. I'm explaining to her baseball, like, because she doesn't care. She didn't like, And he was like, "Yeah, I listen every week." And then we got into, and then you find out that I think we had enough common interests, and that they were all over the map.
Yeah.
Like now I'm on the theater board. Jerry's a theater judge, and we had a lot of similar interests that we could talk about from topic to topic to topic. And like I said with Jerry, that Jerry could give you, I said in the thing, he could talk about NASCAR pit crews, and he could talk about, high school musicals and stuff like that. And there's not a lot of, there's like nobody that could do it with the intelligence and the depth that he could.
Sure.
But I am a guy that would watch NASCAR, and I am a guy that watches high school musicals.
Sure.
And there also aren't a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
That, they'll go to a musical if they have a kid involved.
Yeah.
But like, I go to musical because somebody wants to go, and I'll just watch. So
Right.
That may have been part of our bond.
Yeah, very, very possible. I'll end with this. I'm very worried about the Carolina sports franchises, because the Carolina Panthers and the Charlotte Hornets, I believe, just lost their last fan. I don't believe I don't know if anybody else was still cheering for the Panthers and the Hornets, but Jerry came in almost every day.
Have you ever heard the story why he's a Hornets fan, why he's a Carolina fan and everything? Because when and see, you're not that, you're too young. when I was growing up, there were no professional franchises in Carolina.
Okay.
Now there's one in 3. There's the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
There's a hockey team, a basketball team.
Sure.
So these all have come into existence in Jerry and my lifetime.
Right.
Well, he said, and you also don't get this. The only old people, all the young people can tune out right now. The listening to a game, laying in bed with your AM radio.
Right.
And because of if you know anything about the way terrestrial radio works, and there are signals that get bounced all the way, and there are signals that get pointed, and there's all these rules that the FCC laid out. So it wasn't just a jumbling and you couldn't hear anything.
Sure.
And because of the station that these games were on in Carolina, he could lay in bed with his radio and he could hear. And they were new. And you can only imagine with Jerry, it's the neat new shiny toy, and I'm going to be a fan of them.
Yep.
And it's because one of the other stupid things, like at night, the physics of it is because they basically say the sky is essentially lower.
Okay.
So you can hear these signals. It's why you turn on your AM radio and you get Chicago. Because the signal bounce is shorter. During the daytime, it's up and down and doesn't go as far. Mm-hmm. But he would lay in bed at night with his transistor radio, listening to whatever season it was, because he could hear the games out of Charlotte. And that's why he became a Charlotte fan.
Yeah.
And only but that was it. And you're right. He will come in and complain about the Charlotte Hornets, and I'll be like, I didn't even know they still had a team. Do they play basketball in Charlotte? Then he'd be like, not very well, and this is why. And then but yes, it is.
Yeah, well, that was good. I appreciate that. Thanks for talking me into it, because I think a lot of times when we come on, we do try to, like, it's not that we pretend or we fake, but like you do kind of like, you got to be ready to go, right? And there's got to be a little oomph to what you're doing. And I was definitely struggling with it.
Well, I remember. I'm
glad we came on.
I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, and because we've got stuff going on, and we used to do this 5 days a week, and we realized it was a little overkill, and it was cutting into other stuff that we needed to do, and so now we try to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but sometimes that gets messed up, and I remember. I knew it wasn't Monday, because Monday was just a mess, and it was either Tuesday or Wednesday. I came in, I was like, so do you want to do a show today? And I will say that, and your response always is, do you want to? Like, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to do? Yeah. And then we kind of court. And one of these days I said, do you want to do a show today? And you just said no. And that was your response. And then we kind of talked. I was like, well, we're going to need to do one this week. And the first one we do is going to be about nothing but Jerry. And it's not going to be fun, and it's not going to be easy, but that'll be the next one we do, and we have to do it before we can do another one. And but I will never, like, you didn't ponder, you didn't mix with, because it's always, you're so uncommitted in a cooperative way. Mm-hmm. Whenever I ask, are we doing a show today? You're like, yeah, we can, whatever you want to do. And that is a thing that I will remember for a long time. I said, do you want to do a show today? And you're just like, no. And, like I said, it's not an act, like it's not a performance, but anybody who's done any sort of like consistent show or radio or TV, and you and I have talked about this, it is a grind. You need energy. You need to bring energy, whether you have it or not.
There needs to be an oomph to it, and you don't have to be obnoxious. Like, you don't have to be flying around and you don't have to Skip Bayless it when you come on. But I mean, I remember.
Good. I don't want to be Skip Bayless.
You started asking me earlier this week, and I was like, I can't even fake it. I can't even pretend. I was like, I don't have the oomph to do it. And some of it was we were still I'm still trying to piece together. It's hard.
Part of the reason that that today has gone so well is I realize there's a big part of me that's still in denial.
Yeah.
And I said to this, and I've said to people, I don't know I know there are 7 stages of grief. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
But I know denial must be one of them. But because I was at the house when the coroner showed up to talk to the family.
Right.
And there was that. So like my intelligent, logical brain knows. My emotional side is still trying to be like, this can't. But then there's the logical part of the side of me too is, because we just saw him Friday. He was just so full of life. And as you said, like you deal with people, whether they're just old age or as your mom that battled cancer for 3.5 years, and you just get this deterioration. You know, if some people die in accidents and it's sudden, like this, from a medical standpoint, I know this has happened to other people,
Right.
but it just, my brain is having trouble wrapping around it, how alive and healthy he was, and then he's gone. And that is, so there, I don't know how long the denial level is.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like there has to be some of it, because my brain is having trouble meshing.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we go today?
I think if you knew Jerry, I hate to steal the whole Nike slogan of just do it, but like that was Jerry. And the thing that, if Jerry was here to give one more message to people of just like, if you want to do it, if you want to try it, just go do it. Because like, and I know the whole life is short is such an inappropriate cliche for this, but it is just like, what have you got to lose? And you will be so much prouder of yourself if you try, and even if you come up short, but you'll come up so much further than you think. Like I think he didn't meet his marathon goal time, did he? Wasn't he?
I don't think he did. But see, he had so many different goals and set
Right.
off and stuff, so it was hard to tell.
But like, even with that, if your goal is, I want to run a marathon, and of course, like your first, you want to finish, but you have a time. Right. But he finished. Mm-hmm. So, okay, so he didn't make his time, but he ran a marathon, which is more than, how many other people did.
Sure. And
then he had another one, and he was going to go forward. And his fearlessness with everything was remarkable.
Yeah.
And I wish I had it. I have it, like, again, in our lane, we all have it.
Sure.
Like, you could have a basketball conversation with anyone. Sure. You could have a basketball conversation with Jay Wright. Right. And you could hold your own, even though, Jay Wright might know a little bit more. Maybe. But you're, and in all of our lanes, we're good.
Yeah.
There is no one I will ever meet probably that had an endless amount of lanes as Jerry. And I hope that I can, because it's the whole thing of leaving our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And maybe he was so good at it because he everything was a comfort zone to him. But we will be more proud of ourselves and lead a more full and robust life if we are willing to leave our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's what I'll take from him.
I said to my cousin, the best way that I would sum it up to end, I said to my cousin the other day, he reached out, he said, sorry to hear about Jerry. And when you and I first started hanging out, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next with my life. I had taken some time off. I was trying to, I wanted, obviously you want a job and you want a career and but at the same time, I remembered thinking to myself, like, I don't want to just do the next thing. Like, I want to make sure what I'm doing, it's something I want to do and I'm involved in it and I'm a part of it and all those things. And I had reached out to you and I said, hey, I saw North Central PA and you came over a couple of times and we talked. And then I finally got to meet Carrie and I got to meet Jerry. And the reason I say all that is I told my cousin, I said, Jerry created something where I get to show up and I enjoy showing up and I enjoy what I'm doing. And I said, I don't know, accidentally, he may have gave me one of the greatest gifts of my life. And I'm sure that wasn't his goal, was to give me that gift. Like, I know he had bigger dreams and aspirations. But if I could tell him one thing, I think I'd be like, hey, like, just so you know, you accidentally gave me an unbelievable gift. So that's what I would end with. Thanks, Jerry.
It's a good place to end.
Thanks.
It's a good place to end. He will be forever missed. And yeah.
We'll end it there. I do want to just hint at something. Do we want to give it away? Maybe we won't give it.
We don't want to give it away. We have
the next episode is
the coolest episode.
Maybe the coolest episode we've ever done. We are going to live stream it, but the interview will be recorded. But it will be a live stream that you can watch on the midday show in the middle of the day. We're really, really excited about who we're going to talk to here later today, and then eventually show you guys.
So we think we're going to run it Monday?
I think Monday is when we're going to run it. So live stream Monday, middle of the day. I'm really, really excited for who we're about to talk to.
I know kids are off school. I know some people are going to be off work tomorrow for Good Friday and the holiday weekend. Enjoy the weekend. I didn't even check the weather. Is the weather supposed to be okay? Spring is coming. We've had some nice days. And yeah, just enjoy the weekend, enjoy the time off. Every time something like this happens, people talk about, your family and saying the important things to the loved ones. But and I won't say that because everyone always says that. I will say is if you want to go try something, if you want to go do something, if you need to figure out how to do something, if you've always wanted to play guitar, Jerry would tell you, there's YouTube things, just go buy a guitar and start picking. And you'll probably a year from now, you will probably be more happier than if you didn't.
Sure.
And that's, I think another issue we have with this is we wanted immediacy, and you got to give yourself a time. Like when he started training for a marathon, he wasn't going to say, okay, I'm going to go around and run 26 miles tomorrow.
Sure.
There's a process and there's a plan to it. So whatever you're hoping to do or hoping to add to your life, give yourself time and make sure you understand that there's a plan. But to go out and give it a shot because you'll be happier that you did.
Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPA.com for all of your local news. Be sure to keep an eye out for Monday's show. Really, really neat guest. We're really, really excited for it. And we will see you guys next week.
All right.